In this video, we're going to show you how to install the front bumper on the Model 3. And this video is going to be the same thing whether you have sensors or no sensors. And there was an overlap in 2023 where Tesla removed the sensors, so some of you will have it if you have the later ones, and some of you will have, won't have the sensors. So let's go ahead and get this prepped up. One disclaimer here is that this is one of our shop cars, and it is absolutely obliterated in terms of the front. So we are using this as a demo. We definitely probably should get a new bumper, but at the same time, I just want to disclaim that there are certain parts where the clear coat has already failed. We're mostly using this for instructional purposes. So if it looks like this, please do not install PPF. This is already too late a little bit, right? But you can still do it in certain other areas, which high impact areas like perhaps maybe the door sill and all those things. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get started. We're going to just do a really quick wipe down. We already did wash this car, and what you want to do as well is it does wrap around a lot of the edges. So we just want to make sure that all the edges are clean. So we want to kind of go over with a clean microfiber that is provided in your kit, and we're going to go over every single edge that basically exists. So, especially this wheel well area, that carries a lot of dirt, which makes sense. And then we're going to go ahead and open up this front as well. One of the things is it does go over the top part of this bumper right here. So we're going to go ahead and open this up. I don't need to open it up all the way. So I can go ahead and spray some of that tack solution and just focus on that, and you can see a little bit of that dirt already. So now that that's done, let's go ahead and spray our slip solution. Okay. For this bumper, it is for the most part one piece. We have a different version that we tried, and it depends on your level of, ambition, I guess. If you want to try this piece, it is harder, but you do get a much more seamless look, even though there's just one seam, which is right here down the middle. But other than that, it's fairly similar. Okay, so with this being said, we're going to go ahead and do something called the reverse roll, which is basically, we're actually going to start from here so we can go to the other camera. And before you get started, you just want to kind of get rid of some of this slip solution on this side, wherever you're starting. So you need it to grab, and you're just going to get rid of some of that soap. That soap is going to make it slide, which you don't want in the beginning at least. Okay. All right, once we have that cleaned up, we're going to go ahead and do a really quick clean up right here, and then we're going to go ahead and just tack it to that corner right here, just like that, and then right here, boom, just like that. Okay. One other thing is when you do this, you want to hold the bottom. All right, and then once we get to this point, there is a flap right here. So you have to stop and try to get this side right here. Awesome. Okay, I'm gonna deal with that a little bit later, but there you go. And then you can kind of just pull it all the way back out. All right, once you get to this point, you have to kind of stop as well, and then go ahead and just kind of lay it down. Okay, I understand it doesn't look great yet, but that's okay. We're gonna go ahead and hydrate all the areas underneath and top layer of the film. So I'm gonna go ahead and start with the top layer. Go ahead and dislodge that a little bit. I'm not really worried about any sort of alignment right now. I'm just trying to get it where it's not sticking to each other. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and spray all up in this area as well. And just so you know, I know I put this on the ground, but make sure you save that because the bottom part is going to be attached to this, and then also your tow hook area is also going to be attached to that, so don't throw that away. Okay. All right, amazing. So now this is moving a little bit more freely. There's a couple areas like here that it kind of did not want to move from. But there you go. Now we have much more loose bumper like so. All right. So once we have it and everything's moving and there's no area that's kind of sticking, we call that floating. We just want to make sure we start with this little area right here. This is right where it meets the fender. And then just so you understand, you're going to tack this. You're going to go here. And you're going to pull. And like I said in this video, you're actually going to be using this for both the sensor and non-sensor video. And with that being said, I'm going to point it out for certain areas. You're going to have to align the sensor before you kind of move on. But I'm going to point that out. But this install is going to be the same regardless. Okay. All right. So now that we have it kind of floating again, we're going to get our tack ready. And this is the alignment point right here. So if you notice, it goes right on the edge. And you're just going to spray some of that tack solution. You're going to move that in. You're just going to tack this down. It's about 1.5 inches roughly at the top. That's all you're focusing on. You're not worrying about anything here. And then once you get to that, you can see that that area did not stick very well. So I'm going to go ahead and spray some more tack solution right here. Sometimes you have to just be a little bit more with the tack solution. All right. All right, so now we have all of that done. And now that we have this tack, you're just gonna move this down just a tiny bit. And there's a tiny, tiny stretch. It's not a whole lot of stretch, but just moving that down. And we're gonna go ahead and spray some tack solution around the surrounding areas, okay? So we're gonna go ahead and move this down just a tiny bit, not a whole lot. And that looks nearly perfect. I like kind of holding this just a little bit, and then you're going to start from the top. You're going to move all the way down to the area, right? So we've created this line, which starts in this right here on the top part, and you moved it all the way down, and we got rid of all that tack solution in the surrounding areas, and look at that alignment. Perfect, right there. Once we have this done, you'll notice a lot of the areas are going to just kind of fit a little bit easier, because you got that alignment done, all right? This is also a good time to kind of keep hydrating. And this is one of those things that you always want to continue doing. You don't want to stop hydrating, but we've kind of done this in sections. And now that we have this line right here and everything here is tacked across this body line, you can pull this across, and this is going to go, you see, about 1 centimeter away from the edge, and you're going to pull all the way across to this corner right here. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. Spray about 3-4 inches away from that. I'm going to move with my palm right here, move into that space. All I'm focusing on, and I kind of hold it into that space. And then with that in mind, I'm going to go ahead and tack that. And you see how it holds because I use that tack solution. And then, honestly, the rest becomes a little bit easier, right? So with this now tacked, before we kind of move forward, we're actually going to focus on tacking this bottom edge right here. So now that that's tacked, you can spray the bottom right here. This goes right to the edge, like so. Okay, just like that. All right. All right, so now that this top is good, and then also this area is good right here. Before we move on, I just want to make sure that this alignment point right here is good. And that's the sensor, and that is an important part. Again, if you don't have the sensor, you could completely skip this part, but if you do, this is going to be an important step. So don't skip this if you have the sensor, but you see I've created 1, 2, and 3 tack points. All right, so now that we've created 3 tack points, 1, 2, 3, now you can focus on making sure all the alignment points are solid, right? So we're going to go ahead and start doing that at this point. Okay, and everything else looks pretty good in the books. right here. And we're gonna go ahead and pull this up just a bit. So we're gonna go up here, pull this up just a tiny bit, not a whole lot. And then I'm just gonna make sure this line works perfectly. All right, now this top part is tacked. This is still good. This will automatically kind of work itself out, which is what we want. And if you look, there's a little bit of a gap. You can pull this down because we haven't really done a whole lot to it. But before you do, go ahead and spray some of that tack solution. Bring this down, and you can go ahead and go from this corner right here and start pulling everything down to alignment, right? This is not a full wrap kit. A lot of the DIY kit doesn't do that because it starts becoming fairly difficult to actually execute if it's going to be over the edges, right? That's why you pay the pros to do that. But this one goes right to the edge, which makes it a lot simpler than if it wasn't like this. So we've kind of, dealt with all of this area. You'll see some smaller fingers here. You can see I can kind of easily get it out with a little bit of tack solution. I do like spraying tack solution right off the bat here. The reason why is this headlight area, there's a recess right here that likes to hold a lot of water and solutions. So that way I'm just locking that in so I don't have to deal with that at any point. All right, so now that we've done that, I'm gonna go ahead and continue to kind of get this smaller finger out. Look at that. All right, so now that we have, these are small and there you go, nice. All right, all of this is completely done. You can see that there's still a lot of solution right there. I got this bottom tacked. There's all this right here, this finger, or what we call wrinkle. And part of it is you need to stretch this just a little bit. So from this corner out, you want to look at the alignment at the bottom part. You want to pull this a little bit. So if it's been a long time, you can actually still hydrate this quite a bit before pulling it in. And then after that, let's go ahead and spray some of that tack. And I'm going to go ahead and pull this just a tiny bit until all those fingers go away, right? And I'm going to hold it with my middle right here, this middle finger right here. And the same thing right here as well. I'm basically getting rid of all this smaller fingers, and that will help kind of get all of this smaller things out. And my exit point can still go out this way, right? Because I haven't actually tacked any of that. And I could go inwards as well into that fog light area right here. And you can see my fingers are pretty minimal at this point because I stretched it across a little bit. And some of this smaller fingers is really less of an issue. So I can go ahead and start bringing it down. Great. So I still got some of the smaller fingers right here. What I like to do is spray a little bit of tack. This is pretty minor. Go ahead and push this. And there you go. All right, some of these fingers will pop back up, but that's no problem. Spray a lot more tack all up in this area. There you go. So now I have all this kind of worked out. Okay. You could actually use some of your microfiber to kind of wick away some of this moisture and some of this more important parts where it seems, and that should also help with some of the moisture kind of wicking away. It will help for it to stick a little bit better. Amazing. So this line looks really good. All my alignment points are good. This looks fantastic. And then now we can go ahead and finish this out. If you notice, there's very little stretch needed. Actually, there's almost no stretch needed for this area. It just kind of fits right there. So this is kind of how you want it. And once you have this, again, if you have no alignment point, no sensor point right here, This is going to be our alignment point in the inner parts right here. But I do have a sensor, so I am going to use the sensor first, and then I'm going to focus on this corner right here. So again, skip that if you don't have sensors. So we're going to go ahead and we got this top part done. All right, and then we can go ahead. This is actually a little bit more challenging than it looks because you're going to have to kind of work yourself down like so. Okay, so you can kind of focus on kind of getting everything down into this area. All right, so there you go. That fit pretty well. All right. Okay. We're going to tackle this a little bit later because we're going to stretch it across just a little bit. But this whole side is done. Some of those fingers like here, you can handle that a little bit later. So we can address that later. Let's go ahead and go back to the other side. And we're going to hydrate all of this area all the way to the point where you started. Boom. All right. So here's the thing about this piece which makes it harder. I still think the rear bumper is much harder on this car, but there's still a good amount of stretch because there's a good amount of angle right here. I mean, this is not quite a 90-degree angle, but it's definitely about 135. You're gonna have to stretch it because if you don't stretch it, all this material bunches up like this. So if you stretch it, material goes away. So that's exactly what we're gonna be doing. Stretch point is gonna be right here, and then after that, since we don't have a tow hook area, it's going to be right here in the corner. And then once you get to that point, again, if you have sensors, you want to make sure you focus on these 2 points as you stretch. Here's the key thing about stretching. When you stretch, number one tip, go ahead and wipe down some of the slip solution on the top layer. If you have a lot of slip solution, what happens is your fingers and your hands kind of slip, right? Which makes sense, okay, slip solution. So by wicking away some of that moisture in the top layer, you're able to grab a little bit more and stretch more evenly. 2, you want to use both hands. You don't want to use one hand, because if you just stretch the top, what happens to the bottom? It starts to go out this way. You want to use both hands, pull it all the way across, try to lock in both at the same time if possible. I understand that's hard. Okay? So now that both of them are actually pretty well positioned, I'm going to go ahead and do something called a pre-stretch. I'm going to test it out, and you can do this as many times as possible in terms of practice, right? So we're going to go ahead and pull this. So you're going to go ahead and pull. You want to be before the stretch point right here, and then we're going to go ahead and pull this across, just like that. You see all that pull? What happens when you pull? Well, that whole area comes out better. Boom. So you see, it's a decent amount of stretch on both sides. So you're going to really focus on this corner, and then you're also going to be focusing on the top. I know that's going to be a lot for a lot of people. But when you do that, what happens? Well, all of this goes away. So now that we have a pre-stretch, again, take as much time as you need. If you do that, this will feel a little bit easier. There's a lot of time. It's not like you got to rush. If you need more time, you could hydrate this underneath it again, and then do a few more practices. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and actually do tack right here, and then tack right there as well. All right, and then we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to pull this across this way. I'm going to grab my squeegee and go ahead and tack this down. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and pull this as well. And with one hand, we'll go ahead and tack this down. And remember what I did over here? I basically pull this and go all the way down, right? So I created basically a stretch point right here. So you kind of pull back a little bit. However, this area is perfect. And look at all the stretch, it's beautiful. Right? And if you look, the sensors all look really good. This looks perfect, actually. It fit in perfectly. This is a little bit behind. Well, why? I didn't quite stretch this all the way across right here, and it didn't actually hold. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this again, making sure this is still good, right? And I'm going to go ahead and pull this out. And if this is still not completely, it's still kind of tacking, what you can do at this point is just spray a bunch of slip and then let it go. Oh, that dislodged. So I mean, that's one way to do it, I guess. So this time I'm going to focus one more time. I'm going to focus on making sure that this is all the way up here. And that's going to be my first focus. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and spray a lot more tack, honestly, in that area. And I got my squeegee. All right, let's focus on this bottom part first so we can get it all down. That's fantastic. Okay, and I know that this isn't quite there yet, so I'm going to go ahead and fold this. Awesome. All right, so this is going to be the challenge. I'm going to do this one more time. All right, this time, one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to let this sit just for a few seconds. Because part of the thing is it's not tacking and holding, all right? So I got that to hold, which is good. Now this is holding, and now this looks a lot better. And you can see once you stretch, what happened? All of this kind of fit and made its way in here. So first off is you want to make sure the sensors, again, if you have sensors, you want to make sure the sensors are all good. So we're going to go ahead and start with this. Make sure that it's all good, which is right here. Amazing. That's perfect. Awesome. And then this sensor nearly fit perfectly. So I don't have to worry about this sensor right here. But now we can focus on getting all the stuff in between. So go ahead and make sure if you have kind of wiped away some of the slip solution on the top layer, you want to make sure you get slip underneath right there or on the top layer, and then make sure so that it's lubricated before you start squeegeeing. Okay? So all I'm focusing on is everything down the middle. I'm going to do a double take, making sure everything is good. Sensors are both aligned, and I'm good to go. Boom. Perfect. All right. And then you could actually keep this open. And then let's make sure. One tip here too, guys. A lot of the moisture is going to sit right here in this body line. You see that? So you really want to make sure you focus on that body line before you kind of move forward. So I kind of go a little bit before that and then push everything up. Okay. Right here, it's not sticking. No problem. Awesome. All right, so we got some of this tack solution that is required right here. Same thing here. Let this sit a little bit. Okay. I like tacking this top because a lot of times the way that gravity works, right, it brings the water down. So a lot of times you'll just have a little pocket of water. It gets hard to get out later. So when you tack it, it avoids that happening later down the line. So I actually like getting rid of this sooner than later because that's exactly what's going to happen. So I kind of go over the edge. Like, so I don't have to go all the way. I'll show you how to do that later. But I do like getting it kind of past a little bit of the edge, so it's less likely to come back. And then before I kind of fully move on, I'm going to make sure there's no slip solution or anything like that under there. If you have it like underneath here, so you see how it wraps around because like naturally, mainly because you stretched it. So when you stretch it, it tries to hug that edges, which is exactly what we want. This is exactly what happened. If you notice earlier, there were fingers every single part of this area, and now they're all gone because we distributed that right here, okay? So now that we have the whole middle stuff done, like I said, we can worry about this bottom part a little later. We're gonna basically do the same thing on the other side. Since we already showed you how to do it, I'm gonna go ahead and just do this real quick, and then I'll come back to doing the rest of the area. Okay, so same thing, guys. Hydrate, hydrate, hydrate right here. All the way across, hydrate right here. We haven't done this yet. I got my tack solution right here. Same thing here, guys. I'm gonna go ahead and go right to the edge right here. Use one pump technique. Okay. All right, one tip too with PPF is what I try to do is I first kind of lightly squeegee it, and then once I get really confident, then I kind of go a little harder. So again, if you have a sensor, don't forget this. I'm gonna go ahead and push this into place, which is perfect. And then my alignment point on that is amazing. All right, so that's really solid. And then now that we have this, we can focus on this top edge right here. So once you pull this up, oh, that got unlatched a little bit. So let's go ahead and handle that real quick. Okay, there you go. And then I'm gonna move this up. Move this up. Okay, all right. Alignment is pristine right here. And then now that I have all this, this can be moved, like I said. Okay. Boom, there you go. So that the rest, I can go ahead and start squeegeeing outwards right here. And if you notice, because we aligned this, everything kind of just fit right at this point. There's some fingers right here, but that can be kind of figured out right here. Now we're gonna handle this right here. This seems a little intimidating, but no worries. If you just kind of take it slow, kind of distribute this a little bit better, it will be pretty, I don't say simple, but definitely easier than it looks. All right, so I got some of this fingers right here. So let me see if I can get rid of it. Actually, yeah, I'll be fine. Amazing, okay. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and let this sit. Getting basically all the potential soap out. When I do that, the tack actually activates a little bit better, like so. Okay, look at that. So that's good. I got some smaller fingers that I can get out a little bit later. Okay. All right, so all of this now is all done. So you have all of this completely down, and you're gonna have some areas like here where you can focus on. You're just gonna go ahead and bring this down. And there's gonna be a little bit of fingers and some work that probably needs to be done. But that one you can kind of gradually do as well. Look at that. It'll work itself out. There you go. Okay. All right. So now, since we have this side done, we actually don't have the other side done. So we should probably do that side. I got it up to here though. So I mean, for the most part, it is pretty down. Let's go ahead and handle this because there's a weird thing going on right here. So I'm gonna go ahead and use some tack. Okay. All right. So here's where we want to kind of push this. Try to distribute this a little bit more. There you go. So some of that can kind of come this way, and then I mentioned this multiple times, water loves to sit right there. So I want to be a little slower when it gets to these areas right here, because these are what I would consider problematic areas. All right, so once I get to this point, if you have some of those fingers right here, I kind of pull it apart like that, and then distribute it a little bit more evenly. And as I do this, I'm going to spray a good amount of tack solution in there, and that will help with also the adhering and activating that adhesive, right? There you go. I got some of these more aggressive fingers right here. There you go. So once it's at this size, it gets a little bit more manageable. So you can just let it sit a little bit. You're gonna go ahead and just push it all down. And if it's not manageable, you could kind of lift this up a little bit, and then you could kind of distribute it again a little bit more, because like I said, you want to divide and conquer. So there you go. I got this bottom part. I'm going to distribute it right here. I'm going to pull it a little bit more this side, and there you go. And that is far better than it was earlier. There you go. Now that is, to me, much more manageable. All right, so some of these areas, part of the reason why it's going to keep popping back up is all this water just keeps coming back to it. So one tip you can do is basically get rid of the water, and it will do that, and it won't come back up. So I mean, some of the areas you can use this trick. That worked. And then I got one more right here. Kind of distribute this a little bit. And you can hold it for about 10 seconds. Watch this. All right, so that one, I want to let it hold maybe a little longer. Push it down. All right, I can deal with that a little bit later. That finger is pretty small. So let's go ahead and get the rest of this. So again, focusing on this edge right here, you want to kind of roll it over. And because there's a good amount of stretch, it should be pretty natural. But like I said, I want you to kind of use a microfiber too right here. Just make sure no bubble is left behind. Okay. You kind of have a very similar situation right here on this part. Go ahead and keep getting all these bubbles out. And then you want to do the same thing right here. Smaller fingers, no problem. Okay, there you go. And then same thing here. Push this all down. Push this all down. Amazing. If you need to, use a microfiber technique. And like I said, certain areas you might just have to come back when it's dry, and that should also help and get it all done. So that is pretty much it for the main and most difficult part. There's going to be a couple areas like here. You can actually hit this a little later. Hit a little bit with some of that tack solution, and then use the microfiber technique as well. Excuse me. And it goes away. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and do some of that technique right here. All right, so this part right here, you can see that some of the areas it's right to the edge, so that's good. But you can check if you can actually get this down. So what you want to do is just go ahead and peel it up just a little bit, spray some of this tack solution, and what we're going to do is roll it over down to the edge. Look at that. Roll it over down to the edge. And this is really important that you roll over the edge instead of missing those edges, because if you don't do that, it's honestly not going to hold, and you're going to get bubbles all up in this area. Okay? And before you do this, just kind of look at your surrounding. I actually just checked all this. There's no like crazy bubbles or anything like that. So I feel pretty confident that it's fine. Good catch. And if you want to use a smaller squeegee, you could also use a smaller squeegee compared to using a bigger squeegee like this. Okay. Continue to use look at that. And now this is fully protected on this area. Okay. Certain parts it's going to struggle a little bit. There's some of that additional stretch. If you're fighting it, honestly, you could leave it a little bit and you could come back to it once it's dry. You could just kind of roll the edges like this and then go ahead and gradually push it down. So that's what you're going to do on this side as well. And then these are the same areas as well. You can do the same thing, kind of gradually work on that a little bit. Part of it is just bunching up right there. But before we put on the last piece, let's go ahead and inspect this. Yep, this is good. Oh, this is good. Like I said, this bumper's seen better days for sure. So there's a couple areas where the laminate or the clear coat is failing. But yeah, all of this line looks really good. Okay. All right, so once you're at the position, first off, I'm actually gonna go ahead and get the other piece. But before I do, let me go ahead and get the all right. All right, so before we actually move on to the centerpiece, I know this seems easy, but I'm gonna go ahead and show you. You just kind of put it in there. I spray some slip and then I spray immediately some tack because I kind of want both because this is such an easy piece. And you just kind of align it, make sure it's right inside. And you're gonna go ahead and use that, you know, skinny edge of this PPF and go a little lightly at first. And then as it kind of tacks, you can go a little bit more stronger. Make sure you go all around. This is also protected. All right, so now that we have all the other stuff done, we're gonna go ahead and focus on all these edges. And in this part, I think it's pretty self-explanatory in terms of peeling this off. So I'm going to go ahead and do so. And I have the whole piece right here. It's pretty long. And go ahead and spray slip, everywhere. My apologies. And then once you're in a good position, you can go ahead and just place it down right here and place it down right there. Okay, great. Everything is hydrated, so we're good to go. I'm gonna go ahead and start with the driver's side since that's what we started with. And your first point of alignment point is gonna be a little tricky, but it's gonna be right here, you see? You're just gonna go ahead and place it down, make sure that the alignment is good. And this is what we call a butt seam, where it doesn't overlap at all, but it goes right next to each other like so, right? So kind of get a good feel for how that looks. So this is what it should look like, and then you want to make sure that it seams with these pieces as well. Okay, so this is what the seam should look like once it's good. I mean, if you do a pretty decent job right here, you barely see the seam, and it's also right at the body line right here. So this becomes even better. And I would highly recommend using a smaller squeegee. Do we have a smaller squeegee that I can use? Okay, and then just focusing on this right here. So this is your first focus point right here, all right? This little, you got about 1 inch roughly, and then you just want to make sure that the seam right here is really good. And then the next part is going to be right here in this corner, right? Because that's going to be also an important part. Okay. All right. So I got my trusted smaller one. This is actually the 2S, and this one makes it a little bit easier. This is still moving really well. So here's the thing, right? You want about, I would say, 2 to 3 inches of contact. All right. So I want to go ahead and spray some tack. But I also want to just go ahead and get this done right here. So you just want to make sure that the seam here is nice and clean, which it is right now, right? And one tip is to make sure that this other piece is kind of completely, not dried, but kind of adhered before we move on. So once you get to this point, you just want to make sure that it's seamed, you know, all the way about, like I said, 2 to 3 inches roughly. And then some of these little smaller ones, it's not really a big deal. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of get all this out. Okay. All right. Once you get to this point, this is all still fairly, what I say, free. And then you're going to go ahead and go to the other side. And I want to show you how much of a stretch this is. This is literally like 2 inches, which is kind of what we wanted. Okay. So the stretch needs to happen not right here, but from the middle. So we're going to go ahead and stretch from here, go all the way out to this side, and we just want to make sure that everything is good, right? Right there. This is a very important step where I'm not pulling from this corner, because when you do that, it'll pull back. You want the middle to pull back, but then you actually don't want the edges right here to stretch. So I'm going to go ahead and move all this again, and you see how it moves. And you just want to make sure the alignment is fairly good. I'm still moving this side, if you notice. And then once this is solid, I'm going to go ahead and tack it in place. So like that is good. Using my smaller squeegee as well again still. That is fantastic. And remember, I did also the bottom while I'm here. Okay. I'll pull down just a little bit. No overlap. I'm going to try to butt seam all of these. And there you go. Awesome. And then once I get to this point, I'm just going to watch this seam right here. So it's still really healthy. And that is what you want. So now that we have both points done, we're going to go ahead and do the middle. The middle should be pretty natural. But look what it does. It basically wants to grab all the edges once you get to this point. And this is, you want to be a little bit inside. And you just want to tack that down. And then you're going to follow all of these areas right here. So once you get to this point, you can actually, it should kind of follow all this line. The seam should actually fairly kind of fit into place just because of all that tension. And then you can go, of course, up, or you could go down. But because of all that tension, I'm going to tell you right now, it's going to want to hold all that water right here down the middle. So we're going to tackle that in a little bit. So we're going to do the same thing right here as we kind of move our way, making sure that it's not overlapping. Perfect. All right, so then just going to go ahead and move this forward a little bit. There you go, that's a little bit cleaner. Then you're going to go down the center. Okay, so that looks good, but it's actually quite not done yet. Because like I mentioned, it loves to hold all, like look at this right here. This is what's happening right now. But the good news is it's pulling across. So when it pulls across, it holds moisture down and it kind of like leaves that moisture right there. So at this time, you could actually use a bigger one, to be honest. And you're just gonna bring everything down. When you do this, make sure you get all of that edge right here and you bring everything down as well. This is a very important step. You wanna make sure you're really riding this lip right here. Just the front lip. And then take your time. I haven't actually tacked anything. This is why I don't tack anything right now on these, because I can kind of get it. Honestly, this right here, you can see some of the damage from just previous stuff. This is one of those where like you definitely want to protect. It's just the easiest area to kind of damage from parking lots and any of those things. Okay. So take your time in this. Make sure you're inspecting the top layer as you do this, but continue to move all the way to the bottom until you get here. Considering how much stretch you had to put, I mean, you're talking about nearly 2 inches of stretch. It should actually go down fairly easy, to be honest. And there's gonna be some areas where I think it might not, because maybe there's already a damage, maybe there's already a scratch. So if that happens, I will wait until it completely dries and then push it down, because that will go down much easier. Okay. All right, so the final thing, I'm gonna grab my smaller squeegee again. I'm gonna go ahead and spray my tack solution into the seam right here, and then right here as well. And then I'm just gonna go ahead and, the edge is right here. Go ahead and spray my tack solution all the way across, making sure my seam is still good. And then go ahead and just kind of cleaning that up. And then I would 100% do a double take on all these edges. Use your microfiber to just wipe it down. Guarantee you'll see some moisture that got left behind. So if you see some of this, I see one right here. If you see some of that, go ahead and tackle it and move it downwards. But that is basically how you finish the front bumper, whether it's sensor or no sensor. I'll kind of talk about the finishing parts about this. Once this dries, this gets a little bit easier. You just want to roll your finger across the edges right here. Same thing with some of the other smaller fingers. You can continue to use tack solution and get some of those out. Some of the harder areas, you could let it dry a little bit. You could use a little bit of heat to make it a little bit more malleable. A hair dryer would work, a heat gun would work really well. And then after that, you kind of just push it down side to side motion. So the motion will look something like this. And then you kind of advance towards a little bit. So all the other areas look fairly good. And the reason why we actually have a sensor cut out is it's just for safety. I mean, some of these older cars do use the sensor in their software. So if that's the case, you just want to make sure you're not blocking it. I found another bubble right here. So, I mean, that's pretty easy. I told you guys, I warned you guys. It's gonna want to be right in this edges, right? Make sure you do your inspection. You wipe it down with your microfiber and then be very proud of it because this is a hard bumper. So good job, and we'll see you in the next module.